Government has received distress calls from 17 South Africans trapped in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The men aged between 20 and 39 were allegedly lured to join mercenary forces involved in the war with Russia under the pretense of lucrative employment contracts. 16 of them are from KwaZulu-Natal. The other is from the Eastern Cape. Our government is now investigating how the men were recruited.
Under the Foreign Military Assistance Act of 1998, it is illegal for South African citizens and entities to offer or provide military assistance to foreign governments or participate in armies of foreign governments unless authorized by the South African government. President Ramaphosa has ordered an investigation into the circumstances that led to the recruitment of the young men into these seemingly mercenary activities. The South African government is working through diplomatic channels to secure the return of these young men following their calls for assistance to return home.
Willem Els is at the Institute for Security Studies, a senior official there. Willem, good morning to you and thank you for the time. We know very little about these men at this stage, but I understand they were in Donbas. That is in Ukraine, but it's an area controlled by Russia. Does that tell us anything about which side they would have been working for?
Good morning to you, Stephen. Yeah, as you mentioned, it is unfolding and not a lot of information is available. But we know that from both sides, they are recruiting fighters from other countries, especially from Africa, where we saw that some people from Kenya, from Zambia, from Cameroon, and now also it seems like South Africa are being recruited to go and fight the war there with them, where we see that the losses are up to thousands of men per day. So yeah, it is very distressing.
Who would be luring South Africans to go? I mean, how does this kind of mercenary operation work? How do they contact people?
Yeah, they you know, today in the modern age, especially your social media is being used. We remember not too long ago there was this debacle, or actually that unfolded in us, where South Africans were lured to go and work in a drone factory in Russia under false pretenses. And also we see that there are South Africans currently in Myanmar that are struggling to get back because they've been lured with very lucrative job opportunities and promises of jobs in these countries. And that all comes, you know, in the background of, or especially in South Africa, where we see our unemployment rate and lack of opportunities, etc. And that is being exploited by these different groupings.
Would these groups demand that someone have experience first? I mean, yes, the SANDF has been producing soldiers for a long time, and there was the SADF before that, but there can't be many South Africans who have any kind of conflict experience, who've actually fought as soldiers.
Yeah, if you look, and that's a very, very valid point, because if you look at the act that they just mentioned, you know, that act was actually promulgated after 1994, when a lot of South Africans went into Africa with the extensive experience in battlefield, etc., and especially working with companies like Executive Outcomes, and that was to prevent these South Africans, or deter them from going there. But now what we see, if you look at the average age that you mentioned there, from in the late 19s and the early 40s, so or late 30s. So those people traditionally are not exposed to these type of experience. So it seems that, especially from the Russian side, what they do is they bring in these foreign people, they send them through a crash course of a week or so, and then they unleash them on the battlefield. And normally they do that as cannon fodder.
So, I mean, you literally get a week's worth of training. You come from, I don't know, KwaZulu-Natal in this case primarily. You get a week's worth of training and suddenly you're on the battlefield.
Exactly, you know, and they also refer to that tactic they're used by, especially the Russian side, as the meat grinder a tactic, where they just throw bodies at the battlefield, and you know, they sacrifice a lot of lives using. So they also, in the past, they used some of their criminals that were released from prison with the option to go and fight on the border. No experience, very little training, and then they were just pushed to the front.
Is Ukraine doing the same thing? I know they have I mean, in this case, I think Ukraine, conscription is mandatory, but only for men. Do they have a manpower problem, a manpower shortage?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and the longer the conflict is going on, the losses are extensive. and it really places a drain on them. We see that they got a lot of volunteers, especially from the US and UK and Europe, where these people that used to fight in Afghanistan and in Iraq, they go there for a different cause, and they are seasoned mercenaries. But we also see that younger people are being recruited to pushed in because of this severe shortage of manpower.
This war is also not just about soldiers on the ground. There are other things happening, in particular drone warfare. Are there people with certain skills, maybe some people in South Africa or Africa, who have particular skills that two sides might want that are not just being soldiers with a week's worth of training?
Yeah, exactly. Especially in the electronics field, where technology plays a major role, especially in the work, as you mentioned, with the drone warfare that really exploded on the scene with this conflict and became very prominent. It actually changed the face of modern warfare, and it is dictating. So countries like Russia and Ukraine are actually on the cutting edge when it comes to the development of these type of technology, and for that they need young people who are technically sound, in electronics, but also the younger generation being very, very, very good with electronics and with video games and those kind of things, skills that are needed when you are working with these type of drones.
There's a fascinating dynamic with this conflict, which is that it is ostensibly between two nation states, between Russia and Ukraine, very far away from South Africa. And yet it's kind of internationalized. It's an internationalized conflict, if I can use that word. We're suddenly talking about South Africans who were recruited. I presume if it's Donbass, maybe it's Russia. I don't know for a fact. And suddenly we're seeing that this conflict has ramifications far, far away from where it's actually happening.
Exactly, and South Africa's been drawn into that maybe because of especially the endeavors of President Ramaphosa, who attempted to intervene. We saw that they went there and they tried to break a peace, etc. So South Africa tried to be the peacemaker there on the one side, but also now South Africans being lured there for other purposes, and that is very concerning, and it reflects the situation on the ground for South Africa, where young people are getting more and more desperate when it comes to job opportunities, but also what we must remember that they are coming here with extremely lucrative contracts to these people. So greed might also play a role in that, and an opportunity.
And it's incredibly dangerous. I mean, your chances of coming back alive, seeing your family again, I imagine are quite small, especially if in Russia it's called the meat grinder.
Exactly, and like unconfirmed numbers, they say some days they are losing up to 100,000 people, depending how wide the conflict is on the war and where the flashpoints are. So yeah, your chances of survival there is very slim.
Willem Els, I really do appreciate the time. Thank you, Senior Coordinator at the Institute for Security Studies.